Before the world was old enough to count its own years, the heavens were not silent. They shone with choirs of light, countless beings moving like living stars across the endless sky. Among them was Seraphiel, a watcher, one of those sent to observe the earth and record its rhythms. Watchers were not meant to feel. They stood between heaven and mortal life, neither touching nor changing the world below. They were eyes of eternity, guardians of law, silent witnesses to creation. But among them one began to drift. Seraphiel's wings shimmered like silver glass. His eyes were deep and full of questions he never spoke. When the others looked down upon humankind, they saw noise and chaos, wars, prayers, and fleeting love that burned out like sparks. Seraphiel saw something else. He saw meaning in their suffering. From his post above the clouds, he watched a farmer bury his child beneath a tree and weep until dawn. He saw a widow kneel by an empty bed, whispering to someone who would never answer. And every time something inside him moved, something warm and heavy that angels were never supposed to feel. At first he tried to silence it. "Detach," said one of the elder watchers, Uriel, whose voice rang like a bell in the wind. "You observe. You do not feel. You are the sky, not the earth." "I know," Seraphiel answered softly. "But when I see them suffer, I can't pretend I don't care. Why give them hearts so fragile if we are forbidden to heal them?" Uriel's wings flickered with warning. "Because that is the law. We are not mercy, we are memory. Do not forget your place, brother." But Seraphiel had already begun to fall, not from grace but from indifference. He started drifting closer to the mortal world, drawn to their brief lives like a moth to fire. Sometimes he would descend in mist form, invisible, unseen. He stood near dying men and listened to their last breaths. He walked through burned villages where mothers sang lullabies to ashes. The closer he came, the more the ache in his chest grew. Once he found himself standing beside a river where two children played, their laughter cutting through the silence of dusk. The sound filled him with something like joy and pain at the same time. He whispered to himself, "How can they love so deeply knowing it will end?" No answer came, only the rush of water and the beating of mortal hearts that he could almost feel. The other watchers began to notice his distance. He no longer sang in their circles. He missed his heavenly duties, distracted by the pull of earth. One night, Uriel came to him again. "You walk too near the veil," he warned. "You linger too long among them. You are changing." Seraphiel looked down at the cloud line glowing with moonlight. "Maybe it is not I who is changing. Maybe heaven has forgotten what love looks like." Uriel's expression darkened. "Love is the seed of rebellion. It is why the first stars fell. Guard your heart, Seraphiel, or you will share their fate." But the warning came too late. Seraphiel had already heard something on the wind, a cry so faint it felt like it came from his own soul. A woman's voice, whispering not to heaven but to the silence beneath it. He turned his gaze and saw her, a figure stumbling through a forest drowned in snow. Winter wrapped the forest in white silence. Branches bent under the weight of frost, and the air shimmered with small flakes that glowed faintly under the moon. Through this frozen world walked Alara, a mortal woman no older than 20, her breath shallow, her steps uneven. Her cloak was torn, her hands trembling as she pressed them against her chest. Fever burned behind her eyes. She had been walking for hours, fleeing a sickness that had taken her village, searching for help that would never come. When her legs gave out, she fell to her knees beside an ancient cedar tree. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, anyone, if you can hear me." There was no one. Only the wind. From above, unseen, Seraphiel watched her collapse. The sight struck him like a blade. He had seen countless deaths before, but this one felt different. "Do not interfere," the old law whispered in his mind. "Observe, record. Do not feel." But the woman's eyes, dim yet full of desperate life, broke that law apart inside him. He descended, not as an angel in flame, but as a shimmer of light that took human form, a tall figure cloaked in silver mist. When his feet touched the snow, the air warmed slightly, melting a ring around him. Alara looked up weakly. She saw him as a blur of light through fevered eyes. "Am I dying?" she whispered. Seraphiel knelt beside her. His voice was calm like wind through leaves. "You are very close." She gave a small broken laugh. "Then, are you death?" "No," he said softly. "Not yet." She coughed. blood staining her lips. Then who are you? For a moment he didn't answer. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was a watcher, that he had seen empires rise and crumble, that he had watched love burn and die 1,000 times. But none of that mattered now. I am someone who heard you, he said instead. Alara's eyes filled with tears. No one ever hears. I prayed so long that even the stars grew tired. Not all of them, Seraphiel murmured. Some still listen. Her hand reached toward him, trembling. If you are listening, then please don't let me die alone. Seraphiel hesitated. He was not meant to touch her. His kind were forbidden to bridge that gap. The last watcher who had done so was erased from all memory. But when he saw her tears freeze on her lashes, his resolve shattered. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers glowed faintly and warmth spread across her skin. She gasped. You're warm. He smiled faintly. So are you. She stared at him, trying to keep her eyes open. You're not human. No. Then what are you? A mistake, perhaps, he said quietly. She tried to laugh again, but it came out as a sigh. Then maybe we're both mistakes. The snow thickened. Her breath slowed. Panic flickered across Seraphiel's features. He could feel her soul slipping away like sand through his fingers. He looked to the sky, empty, cold, silent. No answer came. Heaven had turned its face. He placed his hand over her heart. Forgive me, he whispered. Then he began to hum. The sound was soft at first, a vibration in the air like the memory of light. It was the song of restoration, an ancient hymn sung only once before, when the first dawn rose. The air shimmered. Snow melted in a circle around them. The dying woman's breath caught and color returned to her cheeks. Light poured through her veins like golden fire. When she opened her eyes again, Seraphiel was trembling. His glow flickered, dimming like a candle in the wind. What did you do?" she asked weakly. "I gave back what was never mine to take," he said, his voice shaking. "Life." He tried to sit up. "Why would you help me?" He looked away. "Because no one else would." For a moment there was silence. Only the wind moved through the trees. Then Alara whispered, "Thank you, stranger of light." He smiled faintly. "Do not thank me. Heaven will not." But she didn't hear him. She had already fainted, safe and breathing. Above them the stars went dark one by one. The world held its breath. Seraphiel felt it. The breaking of the law, the weight of eternity collapsing on his shoulders. Then the light around him caught fire. His wings ignited in white flame, brilliant and soundless. He gasped but did not cry out. His halo cracked, pieces falling like shards of sunlight into the snow. The voice of heaven echoed not in sound but in his heart. "You have broken the first command. You have chosen mortal love over divine law. You are no longer of us." Seraphiel bowed his head. "Then let my exile be my penance." The light vanished. Where an angel had knelt, only a man remained, pale, trembling and alone. The snow began to fall again, covering the circle of melted ground. Alara slept through it all, unaware of the cosmic rebellion that had been born beside her. When she woke, morning sunlight filtered through the trees. The fever was gone. Her body was whole. She remembered only fragments, a dream of a man made of stars, a voice that sang her back to life. "Thank you," she whispered into the empty air. In the distance, hidden by trees, Seraphiel watched her rise. His wings were gone, his divinity stripped away, but his heart was still heavy with something he couldn't name. Longing, sorrow, love, and guilt all woven into one. He wanted to go to her, to speak, to tell her who he was. But he knew what that would bring. His presence would only curse her more. So he stayed at the edge of the forest, a shadow among the snow. Days passed. Alara returned to her village. The people gasped when they saw her alive. They said she must have been blessed by the old gods, for none had ever recovered from that sickness. She said nothing of the man in her dream. Some things were too sacred to explain. At night, she would look out her window toward the forest and think she saw a faint light moving between the trees. She smiled softly, not afraid. "Thank you, whoever you are," she whispered. In the woods, Seraphiel heard her voice carried on the wind. It hurt and healed him at once. He turned his gaze upward. The heavens were silent, cold, and distant. A sky that no longer belonged to him. He whispered to himself, "If mercy is sin, then let me be the first sinner." And from that night on he wandered the edges of her world, unseen, unheard, half man and half memory. He did not know that the act of mercy he had given would soon bloom into something far greater, and far more cursed, than he could imagine. But for now he simply watched her live. The snow fell quietly and the heavens turned away. For weeks, Seraphiel lingered at the edges of the mortal world. The forest became his refuge, the only place that did not look at him with judgment. He could no longer feel heaven's light, yet the silence left behind was louder than thunder. Each night he watched Alara through the shifting branches. He saw her rebuild her life, her strength returning, her laughter slowly finding its way back into her voice. The sight filled him with a strange comfort but also with pain. Every time she smiled, it reminded him of what he had lost, and what he could never have again. He tried to pray but no words reached the sky. His prayers fell back to earth, landing in the dirt like ashes. "Is this what it means to be mortal?" he whispered to the wind. "To feel so much and be heard by no one?" The wind gave no answer, only brushed past him as if avoiding his touch. His wings were gone, their memory lingering as an ache between his shoulders. When he looked at his reflection in a frozen pool, he no longer saw light. He saw a man with tired eyes and skin pale as the moon. He had fallen, but not in the way stories would later tell. Not with fire and fury but with quiet resignation. His was a fall of compassion, not rebellion. And that made it even harder to bear. The whisper in the woods. One evening as dusk crept across the horizon, Seraphiel heard movement among the trees. At first he thought it was Alara again, gathering firewood or herbs as she often did. But then he heard something else. Whispers not of men but of wings. He turned slowly, his breath catching. Out of the darkness stepped Uriel, the watcher who had once called him brother. His wings glowed faintly, feathers burning at the edges with restrained fury. "So," Uriel said, his voice echoing like thunder trapped in glass, "it is true. You fell." Seraphiel's throat tightened. "I did not fall. I chose." "You chose a mortal?" Uriel's tone dripped with disbelief. "You broke the law for her? For one who will die in less than a century?" "I chose mercy," Seraphiel said quietly. "And if mercy is forbidden, then heaven is no longer pure." Uriel's wings flared. "You speak blasphemy." Seraphiel met his gaze, unflinching. "No, brother. I speak truth. We were made to watch, to record, to feel nothing, and yet every soul we watch cries out for love. You call that divine order? I call it cruelty." Uriel stepped closer, eyes burning. "Do you know what you have done? The stars dimmed when you touched her. Your name has been erased from the book of light. Even now heaven mourns you as dead." Seraphiel gave a small, sad smile. "Then let them mourn. I would rather be dead in their eyes than blind in my own." Uriel hesitated. For the briefest moment his expression softened, pity flickering behind his fury. "There will be consequences, Seraphiel. You think you've only saved one woman, but what you've done will echo through eternity. You have changed the law of creation." "Then creation was flawed," Seraphiel whispered. Uriel's eyes darkened. "You always were the gentle one. I warned you, love would destroy you." Then without another word Uriel spread his wings. The air split with light and he vanished into the sky, leaving behind only the faint scent of burning air. Seraphiel stood in the silence that followed, his hands trembling. He knew Uriel was right. What he had done could not be undone. Somewhere in the fabric of creation, a thread had been pulled loose, and it would unravel everything that came after. He turned toward Alara's village in the distance. Smoke rose from the chimneys and faint laughter drifted through the night. She was alive. She was safe. That was enough. Or so he told himself. A spark in the dark. Winter gave way to spring. The snow melted and the rivers sang again. Life returned to the forest, but Seraphiel remained the same, unaging, untouched, a ghost among the living. Then one night he saw her again by the river, standing beneath the same cedar where she had once collapsed. The moonlight caught in her hair and for a moment he almost believed she could see him. "Alara," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear. She looked up at the stars and smiled faintly, her hands resting over her stomach. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said softly, "but I think I'm going to have a child." Seraphiel froze. A child. The words hit him like lightning. He stepped back, his breath shallow. He knew what that meant. It was impossible. No mortal could bear the seed of heaven's exile. He felt the tremor ripple through the air, faint at first, then louder, like the beating of 1,000 wings. The forest went silent. The stars flickered. Heaven had noticed. Above the clouds the thrones stirred. The archangels whispered in alarm. A being was forming that should not exist. Not human, not angel, something in between. Seraphiel looked up, his heart pounding. Please, don't harm her. She's innocent. But the heavens gave no answer. Only a long, low rumble rolled across the sky, as if the firmament itself disapproved. He fell to his knees beside the river, his reflection trembling in the water. If this is my punishment, he whispered, then I will bear it. But do not curse her. Do not curse the child. The wind moved softly like a sigh. Then silence. Seraphiel stayed there for hours, watching Alara walk away under the moonlight. His mind swirled with questions. What would the child be? Would it even survive? Was this the beginning of redemption? Or of ruin? He didn't know. But he vowed to protect her no matter what heaven decreed. He would never abandon her again. The mark of exile. Days turned to months. The pregnancy advanced and the signs of something unnatural began to show. The earth seemed to react around Alara. Flowers bloomed out of season near her home, and animals gathered silently at her door. Some nights her house glowed faintly as if the moonlight itself had bent to her. The villagers grew uneasy. They whispered that she was cursed, that she had consorted with spirits. Alara ignored them, clutching her belly with quiet determination. You are not a curse, she whispered to the child inside her. You are a promise. But in the shadows of the forest, Seraphiel knew the truth. This birth would change everything. He prayed one last time, not to heaven but to the child itself. Be strong, little one. Whatever you are, let mercy be your inheritance, not my sin. He stood watch through every night of that long winter, never sleeping, never speaking. His punishment was silence, but within that silence, something new was stirring. Something both beautiful and terrible. The first heartbeat of a creature that would one day be called the first vampire. The night the child was born, the world seemed to hold its breath. Clouds swallowed the moon. The stars dimmed as if heaven itself refused to witness what was about to happen. Alara labored alone in her small cottage on the edge of the forest. No midwife would come. Fear had driven everyone from her door. The villagers whispered that the child inside her was a demon. Some claimed to have seen light spilling through the cracks of her windows at night, as though she slept inside a storm. Inside, Alara trembled. Sweat covered her face. The pain came in waves that made her cry out to the empty room. Please, she gasped, clutching her swollen belly. Please, just let him live. No one answered. Only the wind moaned through the trees. But beyond that wind, unseen, Seraphiel stood watching. He dared not step closer, though every instinct screamed for him to go to her. His power might save her, or destroy her. He didn't know which. So he stood beneath the cedar trees, whispering words he no longer had the right to speak. Be kind, little one, he prayed softly. Don't take from her what I took already. Lightning flickered across the sky. The storm broke. Rain poured down, washing over the roof in heavy sheets. Thunder echoed through the hills. And then through the sound of the storm came a single cry. A child's first breath. It wasn't a scream, it was a long, low exhale, almost peaceful. Seraphiel's knees weakened. He felt it ripple through the air. Not light, not darkness, but something balanced between the two. A soul that did not belong to any order he knew. Alara looked down at the newborn in her arms. He was silent, his skin pale as moonlight, his eyes an impossible silver. When she touched his tiny hand, warmth spread through her body, easing the pain. She began to cry, soft, disbelieving tears. You're perfect, she whispered. You're mine. Outside, the forest stirred. Animals crept closer, silent, watchful. Wolves sat at the edge of the clearing, their eyes reflecting the dim light. Birds perched on branches even in the rain, unafraid. Seraphiel watched them all and knew what they were feeling. Confusion, reverence, fear. The first of his kind had been born. A quiet childhood. In the months that followed, life in the small village seemed almost normal again. The sickness that had once spread there was gone as if it had never existed. Crops grew strong, winters softened, and children laughed in the streets. Some of the villagers began to wonder if Ilara's cursed child had brought them luck instead. They never saw him closely. Ilara kept him hidden, afraid of what they might say. But sometimes when she carried him through the forest, those who caught a glimpse spoke of strange things. Animals following her silently, flowers blooming at her feet, shadows bending away from the boy's presence. She named him Lucaran. He grew quickly strong and quiet. He rarely cried, and when he looked at people it felt as if he saw right through them. One afternoon when he was about 5, Ilara found him sitting in the sunlight, surrounded by butterflies. "Lucaran," she said softly, smiling. "What are you doing?" He looked up at her, his silver eyes calm. "Listening." "To what?" "The trees. They talk when the wind comes." Ilara blinked, unsure if he was joking. "And what do they say?" "They say you're sad sometimes," he answered, "but you still smile so I don't see it." Her breath caught. "Do they?" He nodded, his expression serious. "But they also say you love me. So I think it's okay." She knelt and pulled him into her arms, heart aching with both love and fear. "You are my everything," she whispered. Outside the cottage, Seraphiel turned away. He could hear the words, and though they filled him with warmth, they also cut deep. He had given Ilara life, but it had cost her a quiet doom. Signs of change. As years passed, Lucaran's differences became harder to hide. His body never grew ill. His skin stayed cool no matter the season. He could see clearly in the dark. And though he smiled often, there was a stillness in him that unsettled people. When he turned 12, the whispers returned. "That boy doesn't eat," muttered one woman at the market. "I heard he doesn't sleep," said another. "They say his eyes glow red at night." Ilara ignored them, but fear crept into her voice when she prayed at night. She could feel something changing in her son, something she couldn't name. One morning she found him staring into a basin of water, his reflection shimmering strangely. "What is it?" she asked. He frowned. "I can't see myself right. The light moves when I do." She tried to laugh it off, but dread grew in her stomach. "Maybe you're just tired, my love." But deep down she knew. The miracle that had saved her was asking for payment. The night of the storm. The change came with the first thunderstorm of the season. The wind howled around the cottage. Rain slammed against the windows. Inside, the fire sputtered and died, and Lucaran began to shake. His skin turned cold, his lips blue. "Lucaran!" Ilara cried, rushing to him. She wrapped him in blankets, held him close. "Please stay with me." He looked up at her, terrified. "Mother, I can hear them." "Hear who?" "The hearts," he whispered. "All of them. Yours is loudest." Her hands trembled. "You're just sick." "No," he said. "It's hunger." She froze. "Hunger." He nodded weakly. "But not for food." Lightning flashed outside, filling the room with white light. Ilara gasped when she saw his eyes. They were no longer silver but glowing faintly red, as if a hidden flame had awakened within him. "Lucaran," she whispered, stepping back. "What's happening to you?" He clutched his chest, groaning. "I don't know, it hurts." She held him again, rocking him like she had when he was a baby. "It's going to be all right, my love. I'm here." But the pain grew worse. He could feel every heartbeat in the world around him. His throat burned, his breath came in gasps. The scent of her skin filled his senses, warm, alive, impossible to ignore. And then he heard it, the whisper of blood in her veins calling to him like a song. He looked up, trembling. "Mother, I can't stop it." Ilara's eyes filled with tears. She cupped his face. "Whatever happens, it's not your fault. You're good, Lucaran. You are my son." He leaned forward, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry." Then he bit. There was no scream. No struggle. It was not violence but release. Her arms stayed around him even as her strength faded. The room grew dim. When it was over, Lucaran pulled back, blood on his lips, tears in his eyes. "Mother," he whispered. She did not answer. He laid her gently on the floor, his hands shaking. The fire had gone out, but faint red light glowed from his skin, filling the small room. He stumbled outside into the storm, rain washing the blood from his face. He fell to his knees in the mud and screamed, Not in rage but in grief so deep it shook the trees. Above him the clouds shifted, and for a heartbeat he thought he saw a figure, tall, cloaked in silver, standing at the edge of the forest. "Father," he whispered. Seraphiel watched from the shadows, his expression hollow. He had felt the moment it happened, the first thirst awakening in his son's blood. He whispered to the rain, "I'm sorry, my child. This is the price of my mercy." Lightning split the sky. When it faded, Seraphiel was gone. The morning after, when dawn came, the world was eerily still. The storm had passed, leaving the earth drenched and shining. Lucaran sat beside his mother's body, silent. Her face was peaceful as if asleep. The marks on her neck were faint, almost invisible. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "You said I was good," he murmured. "But how can I be if this is what I am?" No one answered. Only the sound of dripping rain from the roof. He stood unsteady and looked at his reflection in the window. His eyes glowed softly, and when he breathed, his reflection didn't move. The hunger had quieted, but it wasn't gone. It pulsed beneath his skin, waiting. He stepped outside into the pale light of morning. The forest was silent. No birds sang. Even the wind seemed afraid to touch him. Lucaran turned toward the path that led away from the village. He knew he could never stay. They would find his mother's body. They would see the truth in his eyes. He took one last look at the cottage, the only home he had ever known. "Forgive me," he whispered. Then he walked into the woods, the mist swallowing him whole. Behind him the world began to change. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. The soil beneath his feet darkened as though refusing to grow. The curse had begun to breathe. Far away in the realm above the clouds, the thrones gathered. Voices like thunder argued across the void. "The balance has been broken. A creature exists that feeds on life. It must be destroyed." But one voice, ancient and weary, answered differently. "No. It was born from compassion. Destroy it and you destroy what remains of mercy." The council fell silent. No one dared to decide. And so between heaven and earth the child of light and sorrow walked alone, immortal, grieving and forever hungry. He was neither angel nor man. He was something new, the first of his kind, the first vampire. The world did not welcome Lucaran's birth with joy. It met him with silence, thick, unending silence that felt older than the stars themselves. On the night he was born, no star dared to shine. The moon turned away, hiding its face behind a wall of cloud. Only one faint glow hovered above the roof of the small cottage where Alara lay, clutching the tiny life she had brought into the world. The child breathed quietly in her arms. He did not cry. He did not move. He simply stared at her with eyes that seemed far too knowing for a newborn. They were silver, cold and bright, and when she looked into them she felt both peace and fear. "Lucaran," she whispered. "That will be your name. A name the world will one day understand." She kissed his forehead, and in that moment every candle in the house flickered. A soft wind passed through the walls, though every window was closed. The wolves howled in the distance, not in hunger but in mourning, as though they too had felt something sacred break. Far away, hidden among the trees, Seraphiel watched. His hands trembled. The child he had sworn to protect, his son, was breathing, alive, and yet something inside the air had changed. The stars themselves seemed afraid of him. He fell to his knees, whispering a prayer he no longer believed in. "Let him live in peace. Let him be more than my mistake." He knew heaven had already felt it. Somewhere beyond the clouds the thrones would have turned their eyes toward earth. But no divine fire came. Only silence, the same silence that had met his fall. The village grows uneasy. As months turned into years, Alara tried to raise her son as any mother would. She sang to him, taught him words, laughed at his clumsy first steps. But the world around her refused to let them be ordinary. The fields nearest to her cottage began to grow unnaturally fast. Grass turned greener overnight. The air was always warmer near her door, even in winter. And animals, foxes, deer, even crows, lingered around her home, watching as if waiting for something. When Lucaran turned 3, the first whispers began. "I saw him," a farmer told his wife, pale and shaking. "The boy was standing in the field. Every shadow bent toward him. They say the child has no soul," someone muttered at the well. "That he was born from a spirit." Others were kinder, believing Elara had been blessed by an angel. Some left offerings of bread and flowers at her gate. But as the seasons changed and the strange signs grew stronger, kindness turned to fear. By the time Lucarin was 5, few dared speak her name aloud. Elara tried to shield her son from it all. "People fear what they don't understand," she told him as they sat by the river one afternoon. "It doesn't mean they're bad." Lucarin looked at her thoughtful. "Do you fear me, mother?" Her heart ached at the question. "No, my love. Never." "Then why do you cry when you think I'm asleep?" She froze. The boy's voice was calm, not accusing, just curious. She brushed his hair back gently. "Because I love you so much it hurts," she whispered. "And sometimes love makes people cry." He seemed to consider that. "Then I'll try to love you softly," he said. Elara smiled, tears filling her eyes. "You already do. A father in the shadows." Seraphiel watched the boy grow from the forest's edge. Every year Lucarin looked less human and more like a reflection of what heaven had erased. His movements were too graceful. His eyes too sharp. And yet there was innocence in him, an echo of the compassion that had doomed his father. Sometimes Seraphiel spoke to the trees, pretending they could carry his words to his son. "I'm here," he would whisper. "Even if you can't see me." He wanted to step forward to reveal himself, but he knew what would happen. His presence would draw heaven's gaze. The child would be hunted before he could understand what he was. So Seraphiel remained silent, a ghost father watching from between worlds. He had fallen for mercy, and mercy now demanded distance. The first hunger began with dreams. Lucarin would wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, mouth dry. He would hear whispers, soft rhythmic sounds that matched the beating of his mother's heart as she slept. He didn't understand them at first. He thought they were lullabies. But the older he grew, the louder they became. One night when he was 10, he found himself standing by his mother's bedside without remembering how he got there. The moonlight poured through the window, turning everything silver. He could see her veins beneath her skin, glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm. He felt his body ache, not in pain but in longing. He stepped closer. The sound was beautiful, like music. "Elara," he whispered. His voice made her stir. She opened her eyes sleepily and smiled. "What are you doing awake, little one?" He blinked, confused, ashamed. I was dreaming." She reached up and touched his cheek. "Then come sleep near me." He nodded, crawling into bed beside her. She wrapped her arms around him, humming softly. Her heartbeat filled his ears again, slow and steady. For the first time he understood what the sound really meant. It was life. And he wanted it. He pressed his face against her shoulder and wept quietly until morning. The sign from heaven. That winter, a comet crossed the night sky, a streak of crimson fire that made even the bravest men tremble. The villagers called it a warning. The priest said it was heaven's anger. Seraphiel knew better. He felt the energy in the air, the same vibration he had felt the night he fell. Heaven was stirring. The thrones had taken notice of his son. He looked up at the sky, fists clenched. "You will not take him," he swore. No voice answered. But far above, a choir of unseen light whispered his forgotten name, and the sound chilled him to the bone. Lucarin's 13th year was the year everything changed. He had grown tall and pale, his hair silver-white like frost. He no longer ate much, just a few bites of bread, a sip of water. Elara pretended not to notice, though her worry deepened with every passing day. One afternoon she found him sitting by the river again. The water shimmered in the sunlight, but something strange caught her eye. He cast no reflection. She froze. "Lucarin," she said quietly, "come here a moment." He turned, smiling. "Yes, mother." She pointed at the water. "Look." He leaned over the river, peering into it. The current rippled, but his face did not appear. Only the sky and the trees looked back. "I don't see myself," he said simply. Elara's voice trembled. You used to." He shrugged. "Maybe I've changed." She wanted to scream, to demand an answer from whatever god had done this. Instead she forced a weak smile. "You're growing up, that's all." But she knew it was a lie. Something sacred had broken again. The village turns. That same week, a shepherd found 3 of his sheep dead at dawn. Their bodies were pale, drained of blood, no wounds except for 2 faint marks on their necks. Panic spread like fire. They say it's Alara's boy, one man whispered. He's cursed. He brings death wherever he walks. Fear grew into anger. The villagers gathered torches, marching toward the forest. Alara saw the flames from her window. She grabbed Lucaran's hand. We have to go. Why? He asked, his voice calm. What did I do? Nothing, she said. But they won't believe that. They ran into the trees as shouts echoed behind them. The forest closed around them, branches scratching at their faces. Alara stumbled, but Lucaran held her upright, moving faster than she thought possible. When they finally stopped, miles from the village, she fell to her knees, gasping. Lucaran looked back the way they came. The torches were distant now, like dying stars. They hate us, he said softly. They're afraid, she answered. And fear makes people cruel. Lucaran knelt beside her. Mother, what am I? Her eyes filled with tears. You're my son. That's all that matters. But even as she spoke, the air grew colder. A wind passed through the trees, no ordinary wind. Carried whispers ancient and distant. Seraphiel stood at the edge of the clearing, unseen by them both. His expression was full of sorrow. He knew what was coming. The awakening. That night, Alara tried to keep a fire burning, but the wood refused to catch. Lucaran lay beside her, shivering. His skin had turned nearly white. He could feel his heart slowing, his lungs tightening. Mother, he whispered. I'm so cold. She pulled him close. You'll be all right, my love. But he wasn't. His body convulsed and he cried out, clutching his chest. A strange light pulsed under his skin, red and gold mixed together. Lucaran! Alara screamed. Then suddenly he went still. His breathing stopped. For a moment the forest was silent again. Alara shook him, sobbing. No, please don't leave me. A faint sound answered her. A heartbeat, slow and deep, not human. His eyes opened, glowing like embers in the dark. He sat up, staring at her. Mother, he said, his voice low, different. I can hear everything. What do you mean? He looked around. The blood in your veins. The life in the trees. The fear in the air. Alara backed away. Lucaran. I don't want it, he cried. Make it stop. He pressed his hands over his ears, trembling. She reached out to him, trying to calm him, but when her fingers brushed his arm, the hunger roared to life again. It was overwhelming, beautiful and terrible at once. His body moved before his mind could stop it. He grabbed her, pulling her close. No, he whispered. Not again. But the thirst did not listen. His teeth sank into her neck. The world went silent. When the sun rose, Lucaran sat among the ashes of the fire. Alara's body lay beside him, peaceful. He had cleaned her wounds, arranged her hair and covered her with her cloak. His eyes no longer glowed red, only dull silver, full of grief. He looked to the forest. If you're watching, he said softly, I hope you're proud. In the shadows, Seraphiel closed his eyes. I am broken, not proud, he whispered. You were never meant to bear this. He turned away as Lucaran rose and walked into the morning light, leaving everything he loved behind. Birds took flight as he passed. The sun dimmed slightly and the earth felt colder. The first vampire was walking the earth. The forest never forgot the sound of Alara's death. For nights afterward the animals were silent. Even the wind refused to pass through the trees. Lucaran wandered beneath the branches, cold and half-mad with grief. The taste of blood still lingered on his tongue, a taste he hated and yet needed. He tried to wash it away in the river. He knelt in the freezing water until his skin turned blue, scrubbing his mouth and hands until they bled. But the scent clung to him. Every drop of the current whispered life. Every beat of the water against stone echoed the rhythm of a heartbeat. He screamed at the sky. Why me? Why did you make me this? Only thunder answered, rolling through the mountains like distant laughter. A stranger in the dark. 3 nights later, hunger returned, not the soft ache of emptiness but a deep, twisting pain that clawed through his chest. He stumbled through the woods, dizzy, his vision swimming. In the distance he saw a campfire. 2 travelers sat beside it, a man and a woman wrapped in worn cloaks. They were merchants, resting on their way to the next town. Lucaran moved closer, desperate for warmth, for voices that did not come from the wind. Who's there? The man called, grabbing a knife. I mean no harm, Lucarin said, stepping into the firelight. His face looked pale but human. His silver eyes caught the glow of the flames. The woman frowned. Are you lost, boy? Lucarin nodded. Yes. I haven't eaten for days. The man softened a little. Sit then. We have bread and broth. He handed Lucarin a bowl. The smell should have made the boy's stomach growl, but it didn't. When he swallowed, the food turned to ash in his mouth. His body shook. His vision blurred until all he could see was the pulse in the man's throat. The woman touched his arm. Are you ill? Lucarin jerked back. No. I'm fine. But he wasn't. The firelight shimmered red. The heartbeat thundered in his ears. He tried to stand. Thank you. I should. The hunger surged. He moved faster than thought, his hand closing around the man's shoulder. The knife fell to the ground. The woman screamed, but Lucarin's strength was unnatural. He pushed her away without meaning to. His mouth found the man's neck. Warmth flooded him, terrible and intoxicating. For a moment, everything was silent again, peaceful as if the world had stopped spinning. Then he realized what he was doing. He pulled away, shaking, blood on his lips. The man collapsed beside the fire, pale as moonlight. The woman crawled to him, sobbing. Lucarin staggered back. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't want to. She looked up, eyes wide with terror. Monster. The word cut through him deeper than any blade. He turned and fled into the forest, branches whipping at his face. The wind howled, carrying her cry long after he could no longer hear her heartbeat. Understanding the curse. By dawn he had collapsed beneath the ruins of an old stone shrine. His body trembled with the aftertaste of blood, half joy, half horror. The hunger was quiet now, but his soul felt hollow. He pressed his forehead to the cold ground. If this is life, he murmured, then let me die. But death would not take him. He had crossed the line that separated men from angels, and no path led back. As the sun rose, its light burned against his skin, not pain but discomfort, like the sting of guilt. He retreated into the shadow of the shrine and closed his eyes. For the first time since his birth he dreamed. In the dream he stood in a field of white feathers. A figure of light approached, tall, radiant, familiar. Father. Lucarin whispered. Seraphiel looked down at him, sadness in his eyes. You have fed. Lucarin's voice shook. I couldn't stop it. I know. Then help me. Tell me how to make it end. Seraphiel's expression darkened. There is no end. Only choice. You will hunger forever. You must decide what that hunger means. Lucarin fell to his knees. It means I'm damned. The angel reached out a hand but did not touch him. No, my son. It means you are the proof that mercy has a price. When Lucarin awoke, the dream faded but the words remained. Mercy had a price and he was paying it. The first lesson. He began to test the limits of what he had become. He learned that blood from animals dulled the hunger for a time, though it left him weak. He learned that sunlight no longer warmed him and that wounds closed within minutes. He could run faster than wolves, hear voices miles away, and move silently as smoke. But he also learned that every time he fed, memories came with the blood, brief flashes of the lives he'd taken. The merchant's laughter, the woman's love for her child, the shape of Alara's smile. They haunted him, yet he could not let them go. He wandered through the forest for weeks, avoiding villages, feeding only on beasts that crossed his path. He promised himself he would never touch another human. One night, as he rested in the hollow of a tree, he looked up at the stars. If I'm cursed to live forever, he whispered, then I'll learn what I am before I hurt anyone else. He didn't know that heaven was still watching, waiting for what he would become. Echoes in heaven. In the halls of light, the thrones gathered. His blood carries both grace and sin, one voice said. Should he exist? Asked another. To destroy him would be to admit our own cruelty, a third replied. And so they watched, silent, unwilling to intervene. Far below in the quiet woods, Lucarin opened his eyes. He felt the weight of invisible gazes pressing down on him, but he did not know whose they were. He only knew that he could not stop walking. Every step took him farther from the boy he had been and closer to the creature he would become. He was not evil. He was not holy. He was something new, and the world had no name for it yet. Dawn broke pale and thin across the hills, turning the mist into ribbons of silver. Lucarin moved through it like a ghost. The hunger had eased, but the silence it left behind was worse. Each heartbeat he heard, birds, deer, even insects, reminded him of what he had taken and what he would need again. He had stopped counting the days since the storm that had taken his mother. Seasons changed around him, yet he did not change. His skin never aged. His hair remained the color of frost. He was trapped in one moment of existence, endlessly repeating itself. Among the living. Eventually he reached a road rutted by carts and horses. The first people he had seen in months trudged past him. Traders, pilgrims, soldiers. He kept his hood drawn low and walked among them. He looked almost human. If he stayed quiet, no one noticed the stillness in his eyes. In a small town built around a crumbling temple, he traded the silver ring that had belonged to his mother for a cloak and food he could not eat. The merchant eyed him curiously. "You've the look of a nobleman, boy. Lost your house?" Lucarin shook his head. "I lost everything." The man gave a nervous laugh. "Haven't we all?" Lucarin smiled faintly but said nothing more. He ate a little of the bread to appear normal, though it turned dry and tasteless the moment it touched his tongue. That night he sat alone outside the inn watching people through the windows. Men drinking, women laughing, children chasing one another. He wanted to join them, to remember what it felt like to belong, but the memory of blood on his hands kept him apart. When one of the men stumbled outside to vomit in the alley, Lucarin felt the hunger stir again. He fled before it could grow. The first kindness. Weeks later, while crossing a mountain pass, he heard a faint cry. Beneath a fallen cart lay a young shepherd, his leg crushed. Lucarin hesitated. Helping meant being near blood, and blood meant temptation. But the boy's voice broke with pain. "Please. Anyone." Lucarin knelt beside him. "Be still. I'll move it." With a strength that startled even himself, he lifted the cart as if it were made of wood and paper. The boy crawled free, staring in shock. "How did you?" Lucarin cut him off gently. "Don't ask. Can you walk?" The boy shook his head. "I'll bleed out. My leg." Lucarin looked at the wound. The smell of blood rose thick and sweet, making his throat ache. He tore his cloak into strips, bandaging it quickly. His hands trembled. "Will you take me home?" the boy whispered. Lucarin nodded. He carried the shepherd miles through the dark until they reached a small farmstead. The boy's mother rushed out, crying. She looked at Lucarin with gratitude and awe. "You saved him," she said. "What is your name?" He almost said Lucarin, but the name felt heavy now, filled with too much death. "Call me Lurith," he said quietly. "Then bless you, Lurith. The saints sent you." He smiled at that, a tired, broken smile, and left before dawn. The family never knew the stranger had spent most of the night outside their door, shaking with hunger, refusing to enter because he could not trust himself. The weight of time. Years slipped into decades. He moved from village to village, always leaving before people began to notice that he did not age. Sometimes he worked as a healer, sometimes as a night watchman. He learned to feed without killing. A drop from a wound here, a cut opened in the forest there. It was never enough, but it kept him from madness. He began to hear stories of himself told by others. Tales of a pale wanderer who appeared when death came close, who could heal wounds but left behind shadows that never faded. Some called him the weeping saint. Others called him the hunger angel. He never corrected them. In truth, he felt neither saint nor angel. He was simply tired. A glimpse of the Father. One winter night he crossed a plain of frozen grass under a sky thick with stars. A sound stopped him, a whisper of wings, faint but unmistakable. He looked up and saw a figure descending, wrapped in light. For a moment he thought it was the end. "Father." The figure landed silently before him. It was Seraphiel, though time and exile had changed him. His face was older, the light around him dimmer, as though guilt had become his halo. Lucarin fell to his knees. "You knew what I was. Why did you let me live?" Seraphiel's voice was soft. "Because you were the proof that love could still defy law." "Love." Lucarin spat the word like poison. "I killed her. I drink the life of others to stay alive. That isn't love." "It is the shadow of it," Seraphiel said. "And every light must cast a shadow." Lucarin looked up, furious. "Then what do I do? Wander forever? Feed and weep? Tell me how to end it." "There is no end," Seraphiel said again. "But there is meaning. Every life you touch will remember you. You will carry their pain, and through you the heavens will learn what it costs to be human. Lucaran stared at him. And you? Do you still call yourself an angel? No, Seraphiel whispered. I am the sin that made you. He stepped closer, raising a trembling hand, but before he could touch his son, the light around him flared. A wind roared through the night. Voices filled the sky, other angels calling him back. They found me, Seraphiel said. I cannot stay. Father. Remember this, Lucaran, even in hunger you can choose mercy. Then he was gone, the air closing like water behind him. Lucaran stood alone again, the echo of wings fading into the stars. The wanderer's vow. After that night he stopped hiding. He walked openly beneath the moon, his face uncovered. Wherever he went he left behind stories. A stranger who healed the sick and disappeared. A pale man who spoke to dying soldiers and eased their fear. He fed rarely, always on the dying, giving them peace as he took their last breath. He no longer feared what he was. He accepted it, shaping it into purpose. If heaven had made him a curse, he would turn the curse into kindness. Decades turned into centuries. Cities rose and fell. Empires burned to dust. Lucaran wandered through them all, unchanged, unseen. The world forgot his name, but his shadow remained. A silent figure in old legends, a whisper carried by travelers. Some said he was still searching for redemption. Others said he was looking for a way back to heaven. But those who met him even for a moment said the same thing. His eyes were full of sorrow, but his voice was kind. And sometimes when he left, the air smelled faintly of rain and ashes, like the memory of mercy. The centuries slipped across the face of the earth like wind across water. Kingdoms built of stone had risen, burned, and turned again to dust, but Lucaran walked through them unchanged. Time no longer clung to him. It slid away, leaving him clean and hollow. He learned to move among the living like a rumor. Sometimes he was a monk tending to the sick. Sometimes a soldier who never seemed to die in battle. He learned languages, customs, the feel of every age, but none of it ever felt like home. He kept one vow: he would feed only on those who were ready to die. It didn't silence the hunger, but it made it bearable. He told himself he was helping them, giving peace where pain had taken hold. Yet each time when their heartbeat faded under his hands he felt the same ache. The reminder that every mercy he gave cost another life. The mirror of blood. In an abandoned temple he found a pool carved from black stone. Its surface reflected nothing but stars, though the night sky above it was clouded. He leaned over it, hoping to see his mother's face, his father's wings, anything familiar. Instead, a voice echoed from the water. Do you know what you are? Lucaran froze. Who speaks? The part of you that still remembers light. He stared into the darkness. Then tell me what I've become. The surface rippled, and for an instant he saw thousands of faces. Men, women, beasts, all bound by the same thirst. You are not alone anymore, the voice said. What began in your blood will not end with you. The vision faded, leaving him shaking. Others, he whispered. No. I would have felt them. But even as he spoke he sensed faint threads stretching outward from his heart. Lives connected to his own, distant and weak but real. The curse was spreading. Somewhere, others were tasting blood and feeling the same terrible joy. For the first time in centuries Lucaran sought company. If others like him existed, he needed to find them before the world learned to fear them. He wandered through ruins, deserts, and frozen mountains, following faint echoes of hunger. In the ruins of an old port city he met Irenia, a woman with eyes the color of storms. She was feeding on a dying sailor, tears running down her cheeks. When she saw him she drew back in terror. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. You're one of them, she whispered. I thought I was alone. Lucaran nodded slowly. You were made, not born? She hesitated. A plague took my village. I begged the gods to let me live. A shadow came. It kissed me and I awoke like this. Lucaran's chest tightened. A shadow. My shadow. He told her of his origin, the fallen angel, the mortal woman, the curse that had spread from his blood. She listened, awe and dread in her face. Then you're the first, she said softly. The father of hunger. He flinched at the title. No. Not father. Not of this. They traveled together for a time. She taught him laughter again, he taught her restraint. But the world was not ready for their kind. When they entered towns, people whispered of death following behind them. When they left, livestock were found drained, though neither had fed. Others, newborn creatures of thirst, were already out there, careless and wild. The price of companionship. In a city built on canals, hunters caught them at dawn. Crossbows loaded with silver bolts, priests chanting blessings that burned the air. Arenia shielded him, taking an arrow meant for his heart. The bolt burst into light inside her chest. She screamed, falling into his arms. "Run," she gasped. "I won't leave you." Her hand cupped his face. "You must. If you die, we all die. We're bound to you." Lucaran looked into her fading eyes and understood. Every vampire's existence was tied to his. Her death was already burning inside him, a flame that would never go out. When her body turned to ash in his hands, he walked into the canal and vanished beneath the water. The hunters searched for days but found nothing. Only centuries later would they speak of the pale stranger who could not die and carried grief like a cloak. The dream of fire. Time passed again. Lucaran began to dream more often. Dreams of red skies and bleeding stars, of angels watching from behind veils of flame. In one dream he saw Seraphiel kneeling before a throne of light. A voice thundered, "Your mercy has multiplied sin." Seraphiel replied, "Then let me bear the burden with him." The throne answered, "You already are." Lucaran woke screaming. His veins glowed faintly for hours afterward, as though the fire from heaven still remembered him. He realized the dreams were not just his own. They were memories shared through blood, echoes of every soul connected to him. The curse was learning, evolving. It was no longer just hunger. It was awareness. A decision. Standing on a cliff above a sleeping city, Lucaran spoke to the wind. "If I am truly the first, then I must become the last. No more children. No more hunger born of mine." He bit his wrist, letting black blood fall into the sea below. "Let the ocean keep it," he whispered. "Let the curse end with me." But the sea hissed and glowed where his blood touched it. The waves carried it away instead of drowning it. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the infection of eternity spread again. He watched the light fade and whispered, "So be it. Then I will follow it until the world's end." High above the world where clouds looked like oceans and light itself had weight, the thrones gathered. Their faces were hidden behind halos brighter than suns, their voices the hum of creation itself. In the heart of their circle floated a single image, Lucaran walking the earth with blood on his hands and sorrow in his eyes. "This creature breaks every law," one voice said. "He was born of mercy, but his mercy breeds death." Another answered, "He is the echo of your own silence. You forbade compassion, and this is what silence became." The air trembled. The voice of Uriel, the same watcher who had once warned Seraphiel, rose above the others. "He must be destroyed. He drinks life, spreads his curse, and walks unpunished." "But what if he is not punishment?" another asked quietly. "What if he is the lesson?" Uriel's wings flared. "Lessons are for mortals. He is an abomination." A low murmur rippled through the circle. From the edge of the light stepped Seraphiel, his once glorious wings now burned to starlit scars. The others drew back. Even stripped of grace, his presence still carried weight. "Brothers, sisters," he said, bowing his head, "I know the sin is mine. I broke the law. I gave life where none was meant to grow. But if you destroy him, you destroy what little good remains in me." Uriel's voice was cold. "You ask us to spare a plague? I ask you to remember mercy," Seraphiel said. "It was mercy that built the world, before law bound it in chains." The thrones fell silent. The voice from the center of light, older than stars, spoke at last. "Then we will not strike. Not yet. The child of light and hunger will walk. His choices will be his own. If he becomes a monster, the blame is yours, Seraphiel." Seraphiel bowed lower. "I accept it." The light dimmed. When he looked up again, he was alone. The council had dissolved, leaving only the echo of wings fading into silence. The Watcher's return. Lucaran felt it days later. A pressure in the air like a storm building far above him. He stood on a barren plain, the sky heavy and dark, when a single feather of fire drifted down. It landed at his feet, smoking softly. He looked up and saw them. 6 figures descending through the clouds, their forms half shadow, half light. The watchers had come again, but this time they were not hidden. When they touched the ground, the air shimmered. The leader stepped forward, her armor white as frost. "Lucaran, son of mercy," she said. "Do you know who we are?" "Yes," he said. "Judges." "Observers," she corrected. "We are to watch and record, nothing more." "Then why stand before me now?" he asked. "Why show yourselves if not to condemn?" "Because heaven has chosen silence," she said. "You are to live, but you are also to be measured." Lucaran smiled bitterly. "Measured? By what?" "The same scales that cast my father into exile." "By choice," she said simply. "Every act you take will echo through time. Choose well." Then she turned, wings unfurling. The others followed. In moments they were gone, leaving only a faint scent of ozone and burnt light. Lucaran stared after them. "Choice," he muttered. "That's all they ever give." He looked at his hands, hands that had healed, killed, and comforted. "Then I'll choose the only thing they never did. I'll choose to forgive." Whispers of worship. Centuries later, whispers began to spread across the world. Among secret sects and night wanderers, people spoke of a figure who appeared when blood was spilled unjustly. He would kneel beside the dying and whisper words that eased their passing. Some claimed he drank from them and yet left them glowing, peaceful, as if death had become gentle. They called him Azel's flame, the pale mercy, the angel who hungers. Shrines appeared in his image, small stones carved with wings and a drop of blood. None knew where the name came from, but the faithful believed he was a bridge between heaven and earth, a spirit who punished cruelty and rewarded compassion. Lucaran heard of it one evening from a beggar in a market square. The man had lost a child and prayed every night to the pale mercy to take away his pain. Lucaran knelt beside him unseen. "Does he answer you?" Lucaran asked quietly. The beggar didn't recognize him. "Sometimes I dream," he said. "In the dream, a man with silver eyes says my child is safe. Then I wake and the pain is smaller." Lucaran felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. Maybe the dreams were his doing, maybe they weren't. But for the first time in centuries he smiled without sorrow. The price of peace. He stayed longer in that city than he should have. The beggar's kindness, the laughter of children in the narrow streets. It reminded him of the life he'd lost. He began to forget his hunger for a while. But the world, as always, remembered what he was. One night, a woman was found dead near the docks, drained of blood. People whispered of demons, of the pale mercy turned dark. Priests gathered torches. The hunt began again. Lucaran knew it wasn't him. Another of his kind must have come through, one of those born from the tainted blood that had escaped him centuries before. He searched the alleys until he found her. A young vampire, eyes wild, clothes torn. She looked barely 17. "Why?" he asked. "I was starving," she said, shaking. "I didn't know how to stop." "You have to learn," he told her. "They won't let us live," she whispered. "Better to be feared than hunted." He saw in her what he might have become, a creature of pain turned cruel by fear. He stepped closer. "Then let them fear me, not you. Run." She looked up at him, startled. "Who are you?" "No one," he said. "Just someone who remembers what it's like to be forgiven." She fled into the dark. When the hunters came, they found Lucaran instead. They surrounded him, torches blazing. "Monster," one priest spat. "Kneel and die." Lucaran looked at them calmly. "If death will bring you peace, then strike." They hesitated. The firelight flickered, and for a heartbeat they saw something not monstrous at all. Just a man, tired, eyes full of endless grief. Their courage broke. One by one they lowered their weapons. He turned and walked into the river, vanishing beneath the mist. The council's division. In heaven, Uriel stood before the thrones again. "You see, he spreads his kind and now they kill freely." Seraphiel's voice rose from the shadows. "And yet he defends them. He carries their guilt so they might learn compassion." "Does that sound like evil?" Uriel slammed a spear into the marble floor. "He blurs the lines between light and dark. Soon even angels will forget which is which." A quiet voice answered, "Perhaps it is time we did." The thrones turned. It was not Seraphiel or Uriel but another angel, one of the seraphim whose wings burned gold. "He has shown the world mercy beyond law. If heaven cannot see the value in that, then perhaps heaven has grown blind." Uriel's fury shook the air. You defend a vampire? I defend a soul still searching for grace. And so, even among angels, the seeds of doubt took root. Half of heaven wanted Lucaran destroyed. The rest wanted him left to his own path. For the first time since creation, the hosts of light could not agree on what was right. The wanderer's reflection. Lucaran felt their gaze from afar. He sat on a hill overlooking a city asleep beneath a red moon. You still watch, he murmured. You can't decide if I'm curse or cure. He looked at his hands again. Maybe I'm both. A breeze passed through the grass. Somewhere an infant cried and a mother soothed it with a lullaby. The sound made his chest ache. He remembered Alara's voice, the warmth of her arms. Forgive me, mother, he whispered. I'm still trying. He rose, pulling his cloak around him, and began walking toward the horizon. Behind him, the stars flickered like eyes opening in the dark. The debate in heaven continued, but down on earth, the first vampire kept walking, still searching for meaning in a world that had forgotten how to forgive. The centuries turned like pages. Empires rose, burned, and sank beneath their own pride, and still Lucaran walked. The world changed its gods, its languages, even its stars, but not its cruelty. Wherever men built towers of gold, they filled their foundations with bones. He wandered through it all, through markets that smelled of spice and blood, through temples where priests prayed to idols wearing heaven's stolen names. In every city someone whispered a different story about him. Some said he was death wearing a man's face. Others said he was the angel of mercy who drank pain from the dying. Lucaran never corrected them. He was tired of words. He reached the deserts of the south where sand swallowed whole cities. There a kingdom of pale stone glittered under a sun that could kill a man by noon. Its people worshipped light. They believed anything born without shadow was holy. When Lucaran entered their gates, the guards fell to their knees. Behold, one shouted. The prophecy of the lightless one. Before he could speak, priests surrounded him, draping him in white linen and garlands. They led him to their queen Illyra, who ruled from a hall of mirrors that magnified the sun into painful brilliance. She studied him with calm wonder. You cast no shadow, she said. Our seers foretold your coming, that one who walks between life and death would save us from the plague of night. Lucaran's voice was quiet. I'm no savior. I bring hunger. Illyra smiled faintly. Then hunger is what we need. My kingdom is drowning in comfort. Perhaps your kind of hunger will teach us what we've forgotten. He tried to leave, but she forbade it. Stay a season, she said. Let me learn what you are. He stayed. The Queen of Light. Illyra was unlike any mortal he had known. She ruled with intelligence, not cruelty. She spoke of stars as though she had touched them. At night she asked him to walk with her through the palace gardens where fountains shimmered like molten glass. You have lived many lives, she said once. Do you remember them all? Every one, he answered. That is the curse. Then you must know every form of love as well. He looked away. I remember it. I no longer feel it. She studied him for a long moment. Perhaps you simply haven't met someone stubborn enough to remind you. He almost smiled. For the first time in an age he let himself speak freely. He told her about Allara, about the fall, about the law that turned compassion into sin. When he finished, she touched his hand without fear. Then your heaven is cruel, she said. If love breaks it, perhaps it deserves to break. Her warmth unsettled him. He began to stay near her not from duty but from need. She saw in him something more than monster, and that belief was more intoxicating than blood. But temptation was a circle and he was walking it again. The kingdom falls. The priests grew jealous. They saw their queen turning from the sun and walking by moonlight with the stranger who cast no shadow. They called him demon. They called him death. And in the heat of their fear they rebelled. They poisoned the wells, burned the mirrors, and cursed the queen's name. Within weeks the kingdom of light became a kingdom of dust. Illyra fell ill, her body too weak to fight the plague that swept her palace. Lucaran stayed beside her bed. She smiled through her fever. You see, your hunger came and it was our salvation after all. It ended us before we could forget humility. Don't speak, he begged. I am not afraid, she whispered. But I do not want to die blind. Show me what you are, Lucaran. He hesitated, then leaned forward. You wouldn't understand. Let me try. He bent to her throat. The taste of her blood was sunlight and ash. She sighed once and then her heart stilled. When he pulled away, her eyes were open, reflecting the dawn. He buried her beneath the palace gardens. When the wind rose, it carried away the last grains of sand until only ruins remained, a memory of a kingdom that had loved a monster. He left without looking back. The blood of kings. Years turned into centuries again, and the ruins of Illyria's kingdom became myths. Lucaran walked west where the air was thick with forest and rain. He fed rarely, hiding his nature, living among humans long enough to forget his loneliness before moving on again. In the lands of the north he found cities of stone ruled by proud men who called themselves divine. They painted angels on their walls and declared that heaven favored their crowns. Lucaran watched them burn villages in the name of purity and thought, heaven has learned nothing. He stayed long enough in one such city to hear rumors of a war. The old king was dying, his sons fought for the throne. Among them was Queen Riva, the youngest, born of a concubine but cleverer than all her brothers combined. The nobles mocked her, the priests cursed her, yet her armies never lost. Lucaran was drawn to her the way night is drawn to fire. He entered her camp one stormy evening, offering himself as a healer. She looked at him with suspicion. "You don't wear armor," she said. "I have no need of it." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you immortal then?" He smiled faintly. "Something like that." She laughed, the sound sharp and honest. "Then you're hired." The queen's bargain. Riva ruled her camp with iron and wit. She trusted no one yet listened to everyone. In battle she rode at the front, her sword red with mud and blood. Lucaran followed her through victories and defeats, patching wounds with herbs and quiet words. At night she spoke to him by the fire. "You never eat," she said once. "I've lost the habit." "And you never sleep." "I dream with my eyes open." She studied him. "You're strange healer. Beautiful but strange." He met her gaze. "Beauty fades even in monsters." She didn't flinch. "Then you'll fit nicely among kings." When the war finally ended, she claimed the throne. She offered him a place beside her, and against all his promises, he stayed. Months passed. Trust turned to affection, affection to something darker and deeper. The court whispered of a pale lover who never aged. Riva ignored them. "I don't care what they call you," she said. "Stay." He should have left, but loneliness is its own gravity. He told himself he loved her because she was strong enough to see his truth. In truth, he loved her because she reminded him of what living felt like. The gift. When Riva fell gravely wounded in an assassination attempt, Lucaran faced a choice. Her blood soaked his hands, her heartbeat faltered. "Don't let me die," she whispered. He knew the cost. To save her meant to damn her, to pass his blood into her veins. But he could not watch another woman he loved slip away. He bit his wrist and pressed it to her lips. "Drink." The wound glowed crimson. Her body convulsed, and for hours he held her as light and darkness warred within her. When dawn came, her eyes opened, silver like his own. "What have you done to me?" she asked, trembling. "Saved you." She touched her face. "I feel alive." "You are. But not as before." Understanding dawned slowly. She looked at the blood on his wrist, at the faint reflection in her mirrorless eyes. "Then I am cursed." "You are like me," he said. "But stronger." Her expression hardened. "Then together we are gods." He tried to tell her it wasn't a blessing, but she was already rising, new power burning through her veins. The queen of eternal night. Riva ruled longer than any mortal monarch before her. Her beauty never faded. Her armies feared her and her people worshipped her as divine. Under her reign, night festivals replaced morning prayers. Statues of angels were torn down, replaced with symbols of blood and moons. Lucaran watched it all with growing dread. "This wasn't what I wanted." She smiled. "You gave me eternity. What did you expect me to do with it? Hide?" "Mercy," he said quietly. "I expected mercy." Her laughter was like glass breaking. "You should know better than to expect that from immortals." He realized then that the curse had changed again. Through him she had inherited not only hunger but ambition. He had created not a companion but a rival, a queen who would shape the world in her own image. When he finally left her court, she didn't try to stop him. "You can wander all you like," she said. "The world will still remember me as its first immortal queen, and you as the fool who made me." He walked away carrying her words like knives in his chest. The legacy of blood. Centuries later her empire lay in ruins, torn apart by those who had drunk from her and from each other. Whole families of immortals roamed the earth now, some wise, most cruel. Humanity learned to call them vampires, the children of the pale stranger and the queen of night. From compassion had come a dynasty of hunger. Lucren watched from the shadows as their legends grew. Some called him the father, others the curse. He no longer corrected them. All he wanted was silence. Yet deep within him a whisper remained, the faint voice of his father, the fallen angel. Even in hunger you can choose mercy. Lucren lifted his eyes to the dark sky and whispered back, then I'll keep choosing even if I'm the last who does. And somewhere above the clouds unseen wings stirred, neither approving nor condemning, only listening. Time turned once more. The world grew brighter with science and darker with greed. Candles gave way to fire, fire to lightning, and yet the shadows of Lucren's children stretched longer than ever. They lived in palaces now, called themselves nobility and fed behind silken veils. To humans they were myths, to each other they were dynasties. Lucren wandered through the ages as a ghost might walk through memories. His face changed with each century but his eyes never did. Wherever he went whispers followed. Some worshipped him. Some hunted him. He welcomed neither. One night, under the smoke-stained sky of an industrial city, a gunshot shattered the quiet. A bullet grazed his arm, silver, blessed, burning like holy fire. He turned sharply and saw a man standing in the streetlight's glow, coat long, eyes hard. Lucren, the man said, lowering his weapon but keeping his aim steady. I've been looking for you. Lucren studied him. Then you've found trouble. The man smiled faintly. My name is Kale. I'm a hunter. Another priest with a gun? No. I'm your blood. Lucren froze. Impossible. Kale holstered the weapon and stepped closer. My mother was of the northern line, the remnants of Queen Riva's court. They called themselves the Nightborn. She told me you were our beginning. Lucren felt a strange ache in his chest. And yet you hunt your own kind. I hunt those who forget what it means to be human, Kale said. You taught them hunger. Maybe you can teach them restraint. Lucren's voice was quiet. Restraint cannot be taught. It must be chosen. Then choose, Kale said. Help me. The vampires multiply. They slaughter whole towns now. They've forgotten mercy. Lucren looked up at the red-stained moon. Mercy is what started all of this. Then end it, Kale said. Lucren studied him for a long time. There was honesty in the man's eyes, a spark he had not seen in centuries. Perhaps this was the balance heaven had been waiting for, the child of his curse standing against his own blood. All right, he said. I will help you. The cleansing of Avarn. Together they traveled to the city of Avarn, where vampires ruled openly behind masks of wealth. The streets were lined with marble and death. At night, crimson lights burned in every window, and laughter echoed from behind locked doors. Kale loaded his weapons, silver bullets, salt rounds, holy oil. Lucren carried only his cloak. You don't fight? Kale asked. I am the fight, Lucren replied. They moved like shadows through the city. Lucren led him to the great hall where the lords of Avarn feasted. There, beneath chandeliers dripping with blood-red glass, 100 vampires raised their goblets. At the head of the table sat Lord Thalen, one of Riva's last descendants, his face handsome and cold. Father of the curse, Thalen said as Lucren entered. You honor us. End this, Lucren said simply. Leave this city. Leave them peace. Thalen laughed. Peace? You taught us the taste of blood. You made us gods. Lucren's eyes darkened. Then learn that even gods can die. Before Thalen could answer, Kale fired. The first bullet struck the chandelier, sending shards raining down. The hall erupted in chaos. Lucren moved faster than any eye could follow, his hands a blur. When the dust settled, silence reigned. Dozens of immortals lay still, their hearts stilled by silver, their bodies burning to ash. Thalen crawled toward the throne, his wounds glowing faintly. Why, father? Why kill your children? Lucren knelt beside him. Because you forgot why I let you live. And why was that? Thalen rasped. To prove that mercy could survive eternity, Lucren said. You failed. He pressed his hand to Thalen's chest. Light flared, and when it faded, nothing remained. Cale stood in the doorway, breathless. Is it over? Lucarin shook his head. It never is. The lesson. After the cleansing, they walked the empty streets. Cale looked at him carefully. You could have destroyed them centuries ago. Why wait until now? Lucarin's gaze was distant. Because I hoped they would find the goodness I lost. Maybe they still can, Cale said. You found me. Lucarin smiled faintly. Perhaps heaven sent you to remind me. Do you believe heaven still cares? I believe it still watches. The two walked in silence. Somewhere behind them, the city of Avarn crumbled under its own guilt. Above them, thunder rolled, but no rain came. For the first time in centuries, Lucarin did not feel alone. Months passed. Word spread across the world. The city of vampires had fallen, its masters burned by an unseen fire. The survivors scattered, frightened. But with fear came desperation. Some sought vengeance. Others sought redemption. Lucarin and Cale moved from place to place, ending nests, saving those who could be saved. For a while there was peace, bloody, fragile peace. Then came the message. A messenger, a young vampire trembling with fear, approached their camp at dusk. They call for you, Lord Lucarin, he stammered. The elders want to speak. Elders? Cale asked. The oldest of us, the boy said. Those who remember the queen. They dwell in the catacombs beneath the mountains. Lucarin nodded. Tell them we'll come. The council below. The catacombs were vast and cold, lit by veins of glowing stone. At the center of the chamber sat the elders, pale figures wrapped in ancient robes, eyes gleaming like lanterns in the dark. The eldest Marith spoke first. You cleanse our kind as if we were vermin. I cleanse what has forgotten mercy, Lucarin said. Mercy is weakness, another elder hissed. You would have us crawl back to the humans who hate us? Lucarin stepped forward. Without mercy, you are no better than the angels who cast my father down. The chamber trembled. You dare compare us to them? I dare remind you that even angels fell, he said. Maritha's gaze softened. What do you want from us, firstborn? Lucarin's voice carried through the cavern. An end to the blood wars. No more turning, no more slaughter. Feed if you must, but spare the innocent. And if we refuse? Lucarin's eyes glowed silver. Then you will beg for the sun. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Marith nodded slowly. You seek a covenant. Yes, Lucarin said. One that binds us all. Cale stepped forward, unsheathing his blade. I'll make sure it holds. Lucarin raised a hand. Not by force. By choice. He cut his palm, letting his blood fall into the stone basin between them. The air shimmered. Drink, he said. Swear by this blood that you will honor the living. One by one the elders drank. The glow of the cavern dimmed as if the earth itself had heard the vow. When the last had finished, Lucarin looked at them wearily. Break this covenant and my blood will find you. The shadows peace. When they emerged from the catacombs, dawn was spreading over the mountains. Cale looked back. Do you think they'll keep their word? Lucarin's face was unreadable. For a while. And after that? He smiled sadly. Then I'll remind them again. Cale shook his head. You can't carry the whole world, old man. Lucarin glanced toward the sunrise. I carried its first sin. I can bear a few more. They stood in silence, watching the light creep down the valley. For once, Lucarin didn't flinch. The sun felt almost gentle. What now? Cale asked. Now, Lucarin said, we teach them how to live in the shadow without letting it consume them. Cale looked at him. And when you're gone? Lucarin's smile was faint. Then it will be your turn. They began walking, two figures against the dawn. One mortal, one eternal, carrying the fragile hope that mercy once chosen might outlive the hunger that created it. Far above them, the sky shimmered faintly, as if heaven, after eons of silence, was finally listening again. Years rolled like slow thunder over the mountains. The covenant held at least for a while. For the first time in centuries, vampires and humans lived side by side in uneasy quiet. They traded in secret, shared knowledge, even forged small alliances. Lucarin kept his distance, watching from the shadows as the world slowly healed. Cale had built a new order. Men and women who called themselves the Keepers of Dusk. They didn't hunt vampires for vengeance but for balance. Some vampires joined them, serving as guardians between the living and the eternal. Lucren watched their numbers grow. When he visited their stronghold, Kale was waiting. "You're late," Kale said, smiling through a beard streaked with gray. "I forget time exists," Lucren replied. "You, on the other hand, have remembered how to age." Kale shrugged. "Someone has to keep the mortals company. How long has it been since you saw the sun rise?" "Too long," Lucren said. "But its warmth would only remind me what I've lost." They sat in silence. The firelight flickered between them. Kale leaned forward. "There's a rumor in the east. A figure calling himself the Morning Star Reborn. He gathers vampires who reject your covenant." Lucren's jaw tightened. "He uses my father's name. Whoever he is, he preaches freedom. No more rules. No more mercy." Lucren rose. "Then he preaches extinction. The Morning Star's prophet." They traveled east through forests still whispering with mist. Villages had vanished. The air smelled of ash. In one abandoned chapel they found a symbol scorched into the altar. A circle of wings burning downward. "The rebellion's sign," Kale murmured. Lucren touched the stone. "He calls himself light but walks in ruin. I know this pattern." He looked toward the horizon where the sun bled through smoke. When they reached the next city they found the streets deserted. Only one figure stood in the square. A man cloaked in white, his face hidden by silver. Around him lay dozens of corpses, pale and still. "Lucren," the stranger said. "At last." Lucren's voice was quiet. "Who are you?" "I am Solon," he said, pulling back the hood. His eyes burned gold, not the gold of life but of fever. "Your blood calls to me. I am what comes after mercy fails." Kale aimed his weapon. "You're another pretender." Solon smiled faintly. "You call me pretender, but I am the truth he refused to be. I am the perfection of the hunger." Lucren stepped forward. "You think I'm your father?" "No," Solon said. "I am your evolution. I was born from the ashes of your queen's blood. You sought peace. I seek dominion." The wind shifted. Lucren's eyes glowed silver. "Then you seek death." Solon's laughter echoed across the square. "Try if you still believe you can stop what you began." Before Lucren could answer, the ground trembled. Shadows burst from the alleys. Vampires twisted by Solon's influence. Their eyes blazed crimson. Their veins glowed faintly with fire. Kale raised his gun, but Lucren lifted a hand. "Go," Lucren said. "Find the keepers. Tell them the covenant is breaking." "What about you?" Kale asked. Lucren looked toward Solon. "I'll remind him who mercy belongs to." The duel at dawn. When Kale fled, Lucren faced the newborn army alone. They rushed him with inhuman speed, claws gleaming. He moved like smoke through fire, his movements more silence than motion. For every strike they made, he answered with precision born of eternity. But Solon was different. He fought not with rage but with purpose. Each blow was calculated, graceful, divine. The clash of their strength cracked the stones beneath their feet. "You should have ended us," Solon said, striking again. "Instead you built cages of compassion." Lucren caught his wrist. "And you would build pyres of pride." Their power surged, light and darkness twisting until the square glowed like sunrise. When the dust settled, both stood still, Solon bleeding gold, Lucren silver. "This isn't over," Solon whispered, retreating into shadow. "The age of mercy is dying. I will finish what your father began." Lucren watched him vanish, the echo of his words lingering like smoke. For the first time in centuries he felt fear, not for himself but for the world. Weeks later, Kale returned with the keepers. They found Lucren sitting among the ruins, motionless. "You let him go," Kale said quietly. "I couldn't destroy him," Lucren replied. "His blood is bound to mine. Killing him might unmake everything." "Then what do we do?" Lucren looked toward the dawn. "We prepare. The awakening of the old blood." Across the world, vampires began to change. Some grew stronger. Others burned from within as if their own hunger consumed them. The Covenant's protection weakened. Lucren realized Solon's rebellion wasn't just ideology. It was transformation. Solon had learned to twist the curse itself. Lucren gathered the remaining elders in secret. "You feel it too," he said. The blood stirs. Marith, older now, nodded grimly. He calls to the core of us. The younger ones follow him willingly. We hear his song even in our sleep. Lucaran closed his eyes. Then I must silence it. How? Marith asked. He carries your blood. Lucaran's gaze hardened. Then I'll offer him the rest of it. The pilgrimage of fire. Lucaran traveled alone to the ruins of Illyra's desert kingdom, the place where his curse had first spread beyond himself. The sand shimmered with heat, the air trembling like glass. He knelt at the grave of the queen and whispered, "Forgive me again." He drew a dagger of pure silver forged long ago by Kale's order. He sliced his palm and let his blood fall into the dust. The ground trembled, red light pulsed from beneath. Far away Solon felt it too. He appeared in a storm of ash, wings of flame unfurling behind him. "You summon me to die? I summon you to choose," Lucaran said. "Choice is weakness." Lucaran rose. Then weakness built the world. Their eyes met, gold and silver, hunger and grief. "If one of us must end," Lucaran said, "let it be by mercy, not vengeance." He opened his arms. "Take my blood. End the line. End yourself." Solon hesitated. The fire behind him flickered. "You'd give me everything?" "I already have." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Solon stepped forward and pressed his hand to Lucaran's chest. The light between them exploded, gold and silver fusing into white. The desert wind howled. The stars dimmed. When the light faded, both figures were gone. Only a faint shimmer of glass marked where they had stood. Kale arrived days later. The ruins were silent, the air still. He found nothing but a single feather made of crystal, glowing faintly in the sand. When he touched it, he heard Lucaran's voice, not words but a feeling, peace. He looked up at the horizon. The sun rose higher than it had in years. No screams, no shadow. For the first time morning felt pure. He turned to his companions. "He's gone." "Then is it over?" one asked. Kale smiled sadly. "Nothing that begins with mercy ever truly ends. It just waits to be remembered." He placed the feather in a glass vial and hung it around his neck. "Let this remind us what we fight for." And as he walked back toward the mountains, the wind carried a whisper through the dunes. Lucaran's voice, softer than light itself. "Mercy is the only immortality worth having." Generations passed like breaths. The name Lucaran faded from memory, becoming myth, then symbol, then prayer. The wars of blood ended not through victory but through exhaustion. The vampires who survived the Covenant learned to live quietly among mortals, hidden by centuries of adaptation. The hunger did not vanish, it merely slept. In their place rose the Keepers of Dusk, Kale's descendants in purpose if not in blood. They watched both humans and immortals, ensuring neither strayed into cruelty. Their sigil, a feather wrapped in silver thorns, was worn by kings and wanderers alike as a reminder that mercy and restraint were stronger than fear. The old cities rebuilt. Steam and light replaced torches and candles. Cathedrals that once feared angels now painted them with human eyes, their halos dimmer, kinder. Legends said a spirit walked through dreams when compassion was forgotten. A man with silver eyes who asked only one question. "Do you remember mercy?" No one knew if he was a ghost, a god, or a story told by parents to calm their children. But the world grew gentler for believing he might be real. The last of the keepers. Kale lived long enough to see the new peace blossom. His hair turned white, his body slowed, but his heart remained fierce. He kept the crystal feather, the last trace of Lucaran, around his neck until his final day. On the eve of his death, he called his apprentice, a young woman named Lyra, to his bedside. She knelt beside him, her armor glinting with the faint light of dawn. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "Was there really a man who stood between heaven and the grave?" Kale smiled, eyes closing. "He wasn't a man. He wasn't a monster either. He was the question that heaven was too proud to ask." Lyra touched the feather. It pulsed faintly with inner light. And what question was that? Whether mercy can survive eternity. She looked down. Did it? Kale's breath grew shallow. "You're still asking the question. That means it hasn't died." When the sun rose, Kale was gone, and the feather around his neck shone brighter than it ever had before. Centuries drifted onward again. The world filled with noise, machines, cities, lights that drown the stars. Yet in the hum of power lines and the pulse of data, people began to hear something strange. A voice, faint but familiar, whispering through wires, through dreams, through songs sung by those who couldn't sleep. Some scientists dismissed it as electromagnetic interference. Others called it a phenomenon of collective consciousness. But those who had read the old myths of the keepers recognized the name hidden within the static. Lucren. They said he had returned, not as flesh, but as memory woven into the world's heartbeat. The hunger had become empathy. Wherever suffering was greatest, the whisper grew stronger. A soldier about to pull a trigger hesitated when he heard it. A doctor, weary after saving lives, wept without knowing why. A child on the edge of despair found calm in a dream where a man with silver eyes told her, "It's all right to feel the pain of others. It's what makes you whole." Far beyond cities, where old ruins lay buried under moss and earth, something stirred. In the remains of Illyra's forgotten garden, a single flower bloomed, white with a silver heart. The morning sun struck its petals, and for a moment, a shadowless figure stood beside it. Lucren. He no longer felt hunger nor sorrow. He was neither alive nor dead. He was memory given shape, the echo of mercy that refused to vanish. The wind carried his voice like a song only the earth could hear. "I did not end," he whispered. "I changed." He walked among the ruins, touching the stones, the trees grown through the bones of his past. Wherever his hand passed, light lingered. The desert that had once devoured his sorrow began to green again. Small streams formed, glinting like veins of life. In their reflection he saw the faces of those he had loved and lost. Illyra, Seraphiel, Kale, even Riva. None accused him. They simply smiled. "Did I finally do enough?" he asked the air. And from somewhere above, from the place between thunder and silence, came an answer. Not in words but in warmth. It was Seraphiel's presence, soft as starlight. "You were never meant to be perfect," the voice said. "Only to understand." Lucren lifted his gaze. "Then what becomes of me now?" "Become what you once sought," the voice replied. "Be the dawn between night and day." He smiled, the first true smile in all his endless years. His form dissolved into light, spreading through the horizon until the world itself seemed to breathe again. The new morning. When people awoke that day, they found the air changed. The sky was clearer, the sun softer. The cruel heat of old summers was gone, replaced by a warmth that comforted instead of burned. The keepers of dusk, now scholars and healers scattered across nations, felt it instantly. Lyra, now old herself, stepped out of her home and looked at the sky. She saw, for the briefest instant, a shimmer like wings made of morning. She fell to her knees, tears of quiet joy on her face. "He's at peace," she whispered. "And so are we." From that day forward, the world began to speak of the age of quiet light, a time when empathy guided progress and mercy outlived faith. They built no temples, raised no idols. They simply taught their children to see one another without fear. In every century that followed, when war threatened or cruelty took root, stories of the pale mercy would return. A silver-eyed figure seen at the edge of tragedy, standing silently until peace returned. No one ever caught him. None could prove he was real. But those who felt his presence agreed on one truth. He was no longer the first vampire, nor the fallen angel's son. He was what remained when even hunger learned to forgive. Epilogue. The Feather and the Flame. On a distant hill stood a single monument, unmarked by name. At its base lay a glass vial containing a crystal feather. Every dawn, when the light struck it just right, it flared with colors no human tongue could name: white, gold, and faint silver. Travelers who came upon it said they felt lighter, as if a burden they hadn't known they carried had been lifted. Some prayed. Some simply sat and listened to the wind. Those who stayed long enough swore they heard a whisper, soft, patient, eternal. Mercy is not the absence of judgment. It is the courage to remember love even when love has failed. And when the sun finally set, the monument glowed faintly as though the dawn still lived inside it, waiting, always waiting for hearts brave enough to see it again. Every legend begins with a question, and Lucren's was mercy. If his story left a mark on you, don't let it end here. Tap subscribe, ring the bell, and join me as we uncover the forgotten myths, the dark histories, and the untold origins that shaped our world. Because some stories aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to awaken.